It's Saturday. It's Scotland. It's 1 p.m. and we're back in original form, the legible, credible, inevitable storm, which is a force for good, coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConaughey. And we've got a slightly different setup here. We are in the office rather than in our other studio. And the reason for that is because this hour today is going to be a dry run for our 10-hour Union Telethon, which will be next Saturday from 1 o'clock until 11 o'clock at night, a straight 10 hours. And that will be to raise money for saving the Union in need. And that will be part of our 28-day Yule Britannia Christmas Crowdfunder, which will be beginning on coming Wednesday the 9th at 8 p.m. and will run through until January the 6th at 8 p.m. And this time round, we are looking for £15,000 because that's what we're going to need to make up the shortfall for our work in 2021. So before I get into that and tell you how that's going to play out, what's the story here with Twitter? Okay. Now, many of you will know that back on the 17th of August, now that's slightly over 16 weeks ago, we were unceremoniously suspended from Twitter. Now, we were the biggest group, the biggest pro-UK, pro-union campaigning group on Twitter in the world, and we had just over 30,000 followers, and that had taken us 8 years to build up. And basically, that was a terrible blow, really, for us, because we had a huge reach, 30,000 people posting several times a day. We were getting around 1 million engagements a month, which is very considerable, and it had taken a lot of time and a lot of work for us to do that. Now, that was just taken from us, like cut away from us overnight without so much as a buy your leave. And it felt as if our intellectual property had been stolen, something that we had worked on for 8 years, just disappearing like that. And so, of course, we got a message from Twitter, and they had told us that we were removed for, quote, violating our rules against platform manipulation and spam. Something that we didn't understand, of course, and something that we just most certainly did not do. And so we immediately appealed to them, and we got no reply. And over the course of the last 16 weeks, we have appealed to Twitter 5 times. And then eventually we got this message from them on the 7th of October saying, we're writing to let you know that your account has been suspended and will remain suspended due to multiple or severe violations of our platform manipulation rules, which of course we were not doing. And so it said to us, misleading others on Twitter by operating fake accounts is a violation of the Twitter rules. And of course, we're not a fake account at all. There were 4 pictures of me in the profile pic. Anybody could research the link and see that we were in fact a genuine organization, a registered company in the United Kingdom, so on and so forth, all of which we pointed out to the the Twitter people that we thought we were communicating with. But clearly, nobody had been reading our material, because if they had read the material, they would not have sent us this claiming that we were a fake account. So we sort of almost gave up at that point, because we thought, well, they're not even reading our appeals. There's not even a real person behind that. We're just sending these appeals and they're just getting deep sixed somewhere and nobody's caring one way or the other. So we were just very infuriated by that, very annoyed at our intellectual property being stolen in that way. However, what could we do about it? So, and very little is what we could do about it, very little. So we left it at that, and lo and behold, what should happen? Breaking news, but this Wednesday, we got a message through them from Twitter. Sorry, it's Thursday. Hello, we're writing to let you know that we've unsuspended your account. We're sorry for the inconvenience and hope to see you back on Twitter soon. A little background. We have systems that find and remove multiple automated spam accounts in bulk. And yours was flagged as spam by mistake. By mistake. By mistake, a 16-week mistake. Please note that it may take an hour or so for your follower and following numbers to return to normal. Well, they largely returned to normal, although we are 1,600 down. But nevertheless, we're still got 29,500 followers. And from today, we will start posting on Twitter again after a 16-week absence. So that's something. And it just does show, though, the power of social media and the power that Twitter possesses, because we've been aware now for some time that they are seriously clamping down on views that they don't like. Just a few greetings here. Willie says, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Tusa. TC says, hello, all fellow Unionists from Southwest London. Willie talks about how Parler has taken over. And James says, well done all at Force for Good. And David says, great news. It is great news for getting the message out, but it's a lesson that we won't forget. And it just does show us the ease with which media companies can take you down. Now, in the old days, they took you down if you broke their rules, usually if you were offensive, or if you were nasty, or if you were an obvious fake account. And to an extent, some of that can be understandable. But nowadays, you're in danger of being taken down if they simply don't like your point of view. So we have to always be conscious of that now. And we at A Force for Good have learned the lesson that we must have backup alternatives as well. So we've been setting up an account and building an account on Parler, as Willie talks about. Parler is good. It's not yet a replacement for Twitter. Maybe in time it will become such, but at the moment it's very much an American operation, very much concentrating on American politics, very much from the pro-Trump Republican point of view. So it's got a big audience, but it's not as wide-ranging as Twitter, and there are basically no British mainstream media sources on Parler. So if you want to be seen and heard by the newspapers, then you need to be on Twitter in the UK, which thankfully we're back on for the time being, touch wood. Now, I do ask people to certainly follow us on Twitter, but do give us a follow on Parler as well. Now, you'll need an account. Go to Parler, that's Parler.com. Go to Parler.com and set up an account, and you can follow A Force for Good. Search for us there. we're at parler.com/UK A Force for Good. UK A Force for Good is our moniker on all our social media channels. So please do check us out on parler.com if you can. We suggest that very strongly. Please do that. And we're back on Twitter, and let's just see how long that we last. But we don't. We obey the rules on Twitter. You know, we're open about who we are. We don't. We're not offensive to anybody, and we don't say anything like untoward or the sort of thing that would necessarily get us banned. So we were model Twitter citizens, but nevertheless, they still got rid of us. So that was a lesson. That was a lesson for us, but they've let us back on now, claiming it was a mistake. So please spread that news far and wide, and please continue now to look for us back on Twitter. West of Hawkhill says, watching from the east of Glasgow. Ibrox Park 1688 said, good afternoon from Bangor, County Down. Christopher says, good news. Well done, AFFG, for sticking at the Twitter thing. Yes, thank you. Linda says, that's brilliant news, Alistair. So glad to hear AFFG is back up and running once again on Twitter. It is good news, and it's good news for the Unionist movement, because there's a lot, well, there's quite a few Unionist accounts on there, but virtually all of them are anonymous. That is to say, you don't actually know the real person behind that Twitter name. We at A Force for Good are one of the very few pro-UK campaigning groups that everybody knows who's behind it, and everybody knows that it's a real thing, and so on. So for us to get taken down and taken out of the equation really was serious. And it brings us back in a way to what's going on over in America, because some people will say, well, what does it matter, you know, who's the president of the USA? What does it matter what happens over in America? But the situation now, the political reality, is that much of our political debate, not just in Britain, but throughout the world, is controlled by American-based companies. And that's a crucial point to note. So in other words, a bunch of people sitting in an office in the Twitter's San Francisco headquarters, or robots in the San Francisco headquarters, can get rid of vital political voices in any country of the world. For 16 weeks, they got rid of Scotland's premier pro-UK campaigning group, okay? A bunch of anonymous robots in San Francisco. And it looks like we've maybe been put back on by maybe somebody in San Francisco who actually bothered to read our messages, or after 16 weeks, have a look at us. So everything that happens in America now really does matter in the United Kingdom as well. And so that's why we'll sometimes look at what's happening in the USA, because we're very conscious that it relates to our ability here in the United Kingdom to communicate our politics, whoever we may be. So that's the Twitter matter spoken about. I'm glad to see that we're still back on that. Now, let me say a few words here about what's coming up this week. Now, on Wednesday, the 9th of December at 8 p.m., our crowdfunder will be going live. That will be crowdfunder.co.uk/AFFG 2021. That will be going live at the crowdfunder.co.uk website. And that will run for 28 days straight until 8 p.m. on the 6th of January. Now, this is our third Yule Britannia Christmas Crowdfunder. Our first one, 3 Christmases ago, we looked to raise 2,000. We raised over that. Last year, we looked to raise 5,000. We raised over that. So this year, we're looking to raise 15,000. And we've built up our outreach enough and sufficient to be able to get that. If everybody who cares about the United Kingdom makes a contribution, we can reach that goal very, very quickly and very easily, because this is about talking about saving the United Kingdom here. Okay, this isn't something that's this is critical to the future of the country. So surely we can raise 15k over 28 days. Well, something that we're going to do to really help that to happen is on Saturday the 12th, that's 3 days after the start of our Christmas crowdfunder, we are going to do a broadcast here from the studio in our Nerve Centre in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow. And we're going to do a 10-hour broadcast, okay? Continuous 10-hour broadcast. It's going to be here on YouTube and will also be on Facebook and Twitter as well. And here's how it's going to work out. At the top of the hour, we'll be broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I'll be speaking. I might be drilling down into some important topics that I haven't covered before. I'll also be speaking about the guest who's going to be coming up in the next half hour. And I will also be talking about the prizes that we've got on offer, because we will have prizes for biggest donors that hour. And some of these prizes are really nice. And we have, I'm going to keep a lid on what the prizes are for the moment, except to say that we've got a big prize every hour that will be in demand for the whole 10 hours. And then at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to introduce the guest who will be with me until the top of the hour. And the guest will be interviewed by me on the Zoom machine here. And so we'll simply be broadcasting that element of the telethon on YouTube, and we'll be switching off Facebook and Twitter so people can come over and watch the interview on YouTube via Zoom. And then at the top of the hour, we'll be back onto Facebook and Twitter if we can get our Facebook mechanism working. And then that will follow through again. Same process, me speaking, talking about the prizes, talking about who's won the prizes, talking about the next guest that's coming up, so on and so forth. And then at the bottom of that hour, the next guest to the top of the hour, and so on. So we're going to have, in all, we'll have 9 guests who are going to be speaking with me, all of whom will have something important to speak about and to offer. And the day is going to go very quickly. I'm going to be constantly plugging the crowdfunder. So please give me some leeway for that, because that's what it's all about. It's going to be getting those crowdfunder figures rising all through the day. What you can do is please share the link on your Facebook page, share it from our Facebook page, make a fresh post on Twitter, post the link on Parler, post it on Gab or anything that you happen also to be on. Just get the word out there and let's just see how much we can raise. And maybe we'll raise the whole 15,000 in one day. Wouldn't that be amazing? That would certainly be newsworthy. And we want to create newsworthy things. We definitely want to create newsworthy things. And indeed, this Yule Britannia Christmas crowdfunder is a very newsworthy thing. It's never been done before. The Union Telethon, never been done before. It's a completely new idea. We thought it up, the team thought it up, and we thought, let's just go for it. It's going to require gallons of Diet Coke and quite a few Red Bulls, but I'm going to get through the 10 hours talking, and we'll have guests on, which will really help it to go quickly as well. And so I'm looking forward to that. Please make a date. That's next Saturday at 1 o'clock, running through until 11 o'clock at night. And I'll be turning this camera around, and we'll also have a table there where I can speak to a guest if they come into the studio as well. So that will be excellent. Alan says, afternoon, hope the telethon is a success. Thank you. Stuart says, hi, Alistair, need to liaise with Her Majesty's government. Well, we do. We have a political outreach administrator who sends our material on a regular basis to cabinet members and to notable MPs within the government. And in that regard, the latest thing that we're sending out to quite a few choice members of Parliament is our new Union Heart, which has come out this week. This is our third magazine. It goes free to people who are union supporters. That is, people who are monthly donors. They get a free copy of that if they request it. And so if you're a union supporter and you haven't received this and you'd like it, please do simply drop us an email and we'll get one in the post to you. But everybody who's previously requested it has got it. Now, in this issue, we speak about our mandate for unity. And in the center pages, we have our point laid out for all the politicians to see, which is going to be so important in this coming year, because if, for example, the separatist parties won a majority of seats at Holyrood, they would say that gives them a mandate for a second independence separation referendum. We say, no, it does not give you a mandate. Our mandate for unity is held at the British Parliament. And we explain our reasoning here in this article. We maintain that a vote in a devolved election, which obtains its authority from the UK Parliament, cannot deliver a mandate for a second referendum to break up the UK. And that's based upon four fundamentals. One, that our United Kingdom is one big country. And we don't want our one big country to be broken up. That it's come together through years of the march for unity, through hundreds of years of shared development, to where it is now a nation of unions, much more than a union of nations, and certainly a nation of families, quite literally, much more than a family of nations. Secondly, it's not for Scotland alone to decide to break up that family, that nation of unions. And so everybody else, therefore, is involved. And hundreds of years of coming together can't be destroyed so easily and by so few people in one part of the United Kingdom. It has to be spoken for, and it has to be protected, and it has to be maintained by all of us, and certainly by our Union Parliament at Westminster. And thirdly, the Union Parliament, the Westminster Parliament, has a mandate for unity, because every time an MP of any party is elected and sits in it, then that MP, he or she, is giving that Parliament absolute democratic legitimacy and authority to be the primary Parliament for all of the United Kingdom. And if the SNP don't like that, then they should not be sitting at Westminster. And fourthly, that's what we've just explained to you there, is the correct nature of devolution. Devolution is the British state power exercised by Westminster and devolved to the subsidiary assemblies, which are essential arms of the British Parliament, if you see it in that way. So you can't have the arm of the British Parliament, which is Holyrood, saying it's going to break away and kill the entire body. So Holyrood cannot deliver a mandate for separation, and that needs to be heard, and it needs to be made clear. And we're certainly doing that in this issue, which will be going to many members of the government and indeed MSPs who have got a say on these matters. Christopher says regarding the telethon, can we increase our subscriptions as part of this? It would be great as pledges to the telethon could be immediately implemented too. We're certainly going to aim to increase our subscriptions. iBox Parks 1688 says DLive is a good platform. UNN use it. Yes, I'm aware of DLive. I'm not quite sure how it works, and we'll need to look into it. Talking about UNN, David Clues is going to be one of our guests next week, so I'm looking forward to interviewing him. Always enjoy his shows at UNN on YouTube. He's an interesting Scot, also from this neck of the woods, with a lot to say about the United Kingdom. Christopher just says, yes, the UK Parliament determines constitutional matters. Absolutely. I wish it would act like it does, but it certainly does. Willie says he'd like to stand to vote Sturgeon out. Somebody says, get rid of devolved assemblies. They breed nationalism. Well, that's all that they have done. That's all that they have done. James says we're better and stronger together. Christopher says it is a key point. Why are the SNP sitting in Westminster if they don't accept the constitutional authority of the UK Parliament? It's a very good point. They don't seem to understand the Constitution at all. I mean, I don't like Sinn Féin, but at least they understand the correct constitutional position that if you don't like the Parliament, you shouldn't sit in it. Although they're happy to take the Parliament's money. Derek says, wishing you all the best from Perth. Thanks. Aye, so that's our Union Heart. That goes free to any Union supporter. If you want to become a Union supporter, go to forceforgood.uk/unions-supporters. And people donate from £1.15 a week, which works out over the year as £5 a month. So that's coming up. That's coming up next week. I just want to draw your attention here to something, a really, really good article that was produced this last week by Neil Oliver, somebody that we really do respect as a fantastic educator and communicator. And he had an article published on a pro-UK site called These Islands, and we'll put the link up there. And it was then taken up by the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail ran it last Saturday, November the 28th. And I'll just read the title here. I was born British, and as a British citizen, I'll live out my days. My nationality is a state of mind, and I have no intention of changing either. I know who I am and what I love is Britain, the whole place, every nook and cranny. And that was then also taken up by The Spectator. So it's also published on the Spectator site. And we linked to it. We linked to the These Islands version of it last Saturday night. And over the course of the week, that article has reached 700,000 people via our Facebook site. It has received 14,000 likes, 3.2 thousand shares, and 1.4 thousand comments. That's one of the biggest engagements of a post that we have had, and that linked directly to these islands. So we sent a lot of traffic to these islands as a consequence of posting. So that just shows the power that our Facebook page has got to take something that might have only been read by a few to absolutely blast it out all over the internet. So we're very, very pleased with that, and a great article which will go down in history. The Nats, of course, hated it, and you know, the Nats will say that there's no emotional case for the Union, and then Neil Oliver will write an emotional case for the Union, and the Nats will go, "Oh, that's just emotion. There's no facts there." And that's, in fact, of course, what they did. They just slated it because it was an emotional case rather than a factual case. Well, you know, that's the point. Emotional cases are as important as factual cases. And sometimes they're more important. You know, the head is important, but so is the heart. And sometimes it's the heart that outbids the head. And certainly, Neil has written a wonderful thing here. Lots of good quotes. I'm just trying to find anything that sticks out, but it all sticks out. Keep the house together. This house of ours is the work of 300 years and the rest. And of course, as you know, A Force for Good traces the march, the development towards unity, going way, way back into the dawn of time. In fact, last year we gave a speech, 50 men and women who created our union, from Pythias of Massalia, who was the man who gave it the name in the first place thousands of years ago. And you know what? We're going to take extracts of that and speak about them next week. That would be a good way to take us through the broadcast, the 10-hour broadcast, by focusing in on some of those, what we identified as 50 key creators of the Union, going back thousands of years. And we've never published that speech yet because it's almost like a work still under construction. So yeah, let's keep the house together. Let's treat it like the grand home it is, and make it wind and watertight for the whole family again. The whole family. Let's not break it into flats like a dodgy conversion job by cowboy builders. That's a good point. This is Neil speaking. He says, I don't base my decision on politics or economics or even history. I make my choices based on the responsibility I feel for people alive now and yet to be born. I love Britain more than anywhere else in the world. With all my heart, I declare that those of us born here and who have made a home here by choice are the luckiest, most blessed of all people. I am British. I will always be British. Amen to that, Neil. That's wonderful stuff. And thank you for giving us that wisdom. Thank you for laying down that wisdom. And as I say, you can read that. It's now published on the Daily Mail website. It's at These Islands. It's also at the Spectator UK site. And we've got the link to the These Islands article on our Facebook page as well. And now that we're back on Twitter, we'll start firing out stuff like that on Twitter. And we're going to use Twitter mainly for that, firing out articles that we've written, articles that we like, and our videos again, out on Twitter after all these months of being unjustly suspended by Twitter, who now admit that they made a quote unquote mistake, a 16-week mistake, which tells me that they didn't have anybody who were looking at our appeals that we made, because they would have recognized within 12 hours when we made our first appeal that they had made a mistake. But they waited 16 weeks. But maybe 16 weeks is better than nothing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Richard says it goes back to Britain first arising from the azure main, which is the dawn of time. Absolutely. Since Britain first arose from out the azure main, this was the charter of the land, and guardian angels sang this strain. Roll Britannia, Britannia roll the waves. Britons never, never, never shall be slaves. And that was written by James Thompson, the Scotsman from the Borders, who had the same attitude to the United Kingdom as we do, which is that it's been coming together through time immemorial, and its natural destiny is unity and togetherness. And even Nicola Sturgeon has been hinting at that and saying these sorts of things, although she doesn't want to consciously accept those things. She's spoken about the family nature that exists in the United Kingdom, and why that was like last week I mentioned that. She said that she wanted the COVID carry-on thing, laws to be roughly the same, given the nature of the similarity of the family connections. I don't have the quote here in front of me, given the family connections which exist. So she was accepting that Britain is a nation of families that are closely connected. And this week she spoke on the same matter, and spoke about, given the fact of our geographical proximity as well, accepting that in fact, for the first time ever, perhaps, that Scotland is in fact on the same island as Wales and England. So she's maybe a unionist deep down at heart. And certainly I know that there's a lot of people who vote for the Scottish National Party who, when they're made aware of these sorts of things and they start to think about it through that different angle and through that different frame, will change their minds. And they contact us and they tell us that they used to be yes, but now they're no, because they realize the importance of the shared family connections that we have throughout the United Kingdom. And we elaborated upon that in our little book, of course, which I always like to give a punt to. We call it a wee book for the Union, and it's a pocket book, and it's only a £5. Now Christmas is coming up now, we're into December. You might want to get a few of these for your friends, for your nieces and nephews, for your grandchildren, whatever. Very easy read, and we take it from the dawn of time going right through, and we even quote what Richard mentioned there, the Rule Britannia, right there in the introduction. Although sometimes you wonder, and you can get that at our shop. Go to aforceforgood.uk/shop-1, and we'll put up the link to the shop and also the link to the wee book directly. So please do get that. If you buy it today, we'll get it in the post for you. You'll have it by next week. Thanks for that. Ibrox Park 1688 talks about the apprentice boys of Derry. And you know what? I'm going to get to that because that's coming up this week in British history. So thank you for reminding me of that, Ibrox Park. And isn't it sad that nobody can get into football games these days? It's just so weird. I mean, I was walking past Ibrox a couple of nights ago, and there was a game on, and so the lights were on. All the lorries were outside. There was lots of TV camera vans and so on, and you could just peer through the gates, and there's football players running about, but there's nobody in the audience. There's nobody in the stands. The place is just dead. It was almost weird. It's really weird playing football games and without a crowd is like, just feels wrong. So much about this COVID carry-on pantomime feels just wrong, like wrong in a moral sense. And I haven't spoken about COVID. I usually talk for the first 15 minutes on COVID, but I mean, the news is just kind of depressing as far as that's concerned. And we're still in lockdown here in Glasgow until the 11th. And goodness knows what she's going to then do to us. So there's an awful lot wrong, and it just feels like evil, actually, what's going on. I mean, football games without a crowd, without spectators, that's just wrong. Oh, it's almost creepy, actually. I found it kind of creepy to see all the lights on and activity, but just confined to the television people and the footballers themselves. It's really odd, very odd thing. Anyway, enough of the COVID carry-on pantomime, and we'll see what next year brings, but it's going to have to bring changes. But we know what the big fear is going to be, of course. They're going to, well, I'm not even going to go there. Let's read some positive comments. TC says, Fraserburgh used to be staunch SNP. They now hold their meetings in a wee garage. Well done, Banff and Buchan, for booting out. Alex Salmond. Yeah, people can certainly change. No question about that. Linda says, Neil Oliver is a wonderful fella. His knowledge of our British nation has no boundaries. I agree. Writes really good stuff. And he did a tour a couple of years ago, I think it was. 100 places, 100 important places around the United Kingdom. And we went to see him in one of the theatres here in Glasgow, and really good speaker as well. Very entertaining, very personable chap. Okay, well, let's talk this week now about what's coming up in our British history. And I'm also going to try to put a picture up on the screen here, and I'm also going to try to play a video. So I'm leaving this until the end here in case it all goes wrong. And so please do bear with us as well next week. If you're watching in, drop in anytime between 1 and 11. But a 10-hour broadcast with our basic equipment here will be challenging. Let's put it that way. Will be challenging. And I mean, we can't even get connected to Facebook this morning. I mean, I don't know what has happened on that one. That's really irritating, very irritating. But we'll need to look into that and try to get that sorted by next week. But we've got so much to say and so many people to say it to, and we do our best on what we've got, and good for us, basically. So yeah, we always recall to memory the coming week in British history, and that will be from today until Friday the 11th. And I found something we had written a little while ago, and I thought I'll just repeat this today because it's really quite relevant, and it's also relevant for something that's coming up this week as well. And it's about, why do we remember? What's the point of remembrance? What's the point of remembrance? And we've just finished the month of November, when we do remember those who fought and died for our freedoms. And well, we remember history every day in order to put our pro-United Kingdom attitude and our British identity into historical and social and cultural and modern context, because it helps us remember the past and thereby give breadth and depth to our political concerns of the moment. And many of these posts, of course, naturally remember the sacrifices of the British through the centuries, often in wars. And in that regard, we were taken by a passage in an article which we read a couple of years ago that puts the word remember into a whole new context for us. And it was Charles Moore, who's a journalist, who wrote an article, quote, "Remembrance is about the common soldier. That's why it matters so much," back in the Daily Telegraph on the 10th of November, 2 years ago. And he said, quote, "In an online talk introducing the commemoration of her own college's dead, Claire Haynes, the chaplain of Christ Church, Oxford, points out that the word remember means to put together things that have been wrenched apart. A member is another word for a limb. Through memory, a shattered soldier can be metaphorically re-limbed. To put together the past is an act of intellectual and emotional value, both for an individual and a civilization." Remembering, quite literally putting the members back together again. So that gave us pause. And there was also another few lines in an article around about the same time where Nick Timothy said, quote, "Tradition and national remembrance can bring countries together. It also brings Britain together. Without shared stories, our shared national identity grows weaker. And without that collective identity, our solidarity towards one another erodes, as modern psychological studies now prove." That's right. Without a collective identity, our solidarity to one another erodes. And that's certainly something that we here in Scotland are very conscious of, where we have a political establishment which seeks deliberately to erode our shared British-wide stories, and in fact, to cover them up when they can't erode them entirely, to the point of cutting out British history from schools and removing our Union Jack flag of unity, created by the Scotsman King James VI, from sight. So we're currently benighted by this political attitude, among other things at the moment, but we continue to work for better days, and that is what A Force for Good is all about. So with your help, we will continue to tell these British stories as long as we are able. And this coming week, from the 5th to the 11th, today is the day that the Battle of Britain radar man passed away. He was the Scotsman Robert Alexander Watson Watt, passed away on the 5th of December in 1973. He was born in Brecon, and he's credited with inventing the radar, which helped win the Battle of Britain. Without the radar, we would not have known where the Germans were coming from, quite literally. And he has got a statue in Brecon, which was unveiled in 2014. He was also caught speeding one day by a policeman using one of these radar mechanisms, which was ironic, and he then went and wrote a poem about how he had been caught by his own invention, essentially. On the 6th of December, the Encyclopedia Britannica, which for many, many years was the world's foremost encyclopedia before Wikipedia took over that mantle online. And the thing about the Encyclopedia Britannica was it was established in Scotland by Edinburgh gentlemen, first time published on the 6th of December in 1768, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Great name for it. It was the idea of Colin MacFarquhar and Andrew Bell, and they chose William Smellie as their editor, who took 3 years to produce the first 3-volume, 2,391-page first edition. On the 7th of December in 1688, one of the great formative moments in modern Britain's national history, the closing of the gates of Londonderry by 13 apprentice boys. And this was this was part of the Glorious Revolution. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, there's no conflict in the Glorious Revolution, it was a peaceful revolution. Well, that's people that don't know the British history, because of course there was fights, and especially in Ireland. And it had been on the 5th of November 1688, William of Orange came over and essentially deposed James VII, who fled to France. But James VII wanted to get his kingdom back, so he wanted to use Ireland as the base, and then to invade the mainland from Ireland. And to do that, he would need to capture Londonderry, which was a main port, but which was also a main place of his political and religious opponents. So he had to capture Londonderry if he was to control the north of Ireland and successfully mount an invasion of the mainland, probably through Scotland and then down into England. So he must not capture Londonderry. And the city fathers prevaricated because they didn't really know what to do in face of this massive, the forces of James VI. However, it was 13 apprentice boys who took it upon themselves to slam the gates shut and literally to shut James out of the British kingdom by so doing. And the Siege of Derry was an important story, and it went on from today, the 7th of December, 1688, right through to the 28th of July, 1689, when the siege was broken by the merchant ships, the Mountjoy and the Phoenix, with covering fire from HMS Dartmouth, and under the authority of King William, sailed up the River Foyle and breached a boom which had been stretched across the water. And that signaled basically the end for James's forces, who retreated. And then, of course, James was to win the Battle of the Boyne, followed by Aughrim, followed by Limerick. And then the United Kingdom itself was to follow on the 1st of May, 1707. But without that decisive shutting of the doors, there may not have been a United Kingdom, certainly not one as we understand it today. On the 8th of December, 1915, the poem In Flanders Fields was published for the first time. This was a poem by a British Canadian called John McCrae, and it was the poem In Flanders Fields which established the poppy as a symbol of remembrance. On the 7th as well, which I didn't mention, the Cockleshell heroes of World War II fame rode out, started their mission. And of course, a film has been made about them, which is one of the main reasons why we know of them today. And it was on the 11th. There was 10 of them. There was 10 of them, but there was only 2 that were to survive, because the submarine took them out, and 2 of the men drowned at sea. And 1, 2, 3. On this day, 4 of them. No, yeah, 2 of them. Because, yeah, that's right, 6 were executed, but on 2 different days. That's what I was just checking there. And on this day, Marine Robert Ewart from Glasgow and Sergeant Samuel Wallace from Dublin were executed by the Germans shortly after coming ashore. And then Another 4 men weren't executed until the following year on the 23rd of March. But Marine Robert Ewart is from Glasgow, and not enough people perhaps know about Robert Ewart. We've always thought it'd be a good idea for him to have a statue somewhere here in Glasgow. And he really did write very moving words to his Portsmouth sweetheart. Dear Heather, I trust it won't be necessary to have this sent to you, but since I don't know the outcome of this little adventure, I thought I'd leave this note behind. We'll write about that, but it's a little bit too sad. That's to read out. That's very touching. And he died 1 week after his 21st birthday. A Boys Brigade member and a champion runner. And their graves have never been found. And on this day, on the 10th of December, one of the Cockleshell heroes, James Conway, did get a memorial erected to him. He again was executed on the 23rd of March, 1943. He got a memorial erected in his town of Stockport. And I'm just going to show that to you. I'm just going to share the screen. And that's memorial. And then indeed, in a way, he is dismembered in that. And through that memorial, we do remember him to an extent. So you only see the top half of him, and it's held up there by the paddles. Very unusual, but important memorial there to Marine James Conway, which was erected on the 10th of December in 2017. It's called a steel armature of James's torso and paddle, which depicts his efforts between HMS Tuna, the submarine, and the shore. And he was only 20 years old when he was executed.